Thank you for joining me today, Justin, to discuss the current clinical trial landscape and its obstacles, especially around how AI might be able to fix what's currently broken. There's already plenty of excitement around AI and its potential to improve clinical trial research, which ultimately drives solutions for patients. But we'll also address the skepticism around what's actually realistic. We'll separate hype from reality, discuss genuine advancements like virtual patient simulations, and look at how technology like TrialKey might be able to solve issues like cost, transparency, and efficiency. But first, let's set the stage. The current clinical trial landscape and its criticisms. Clinical trials are often criticized for being too slow, expensive, and lacking transparency. What do you see are the biggest shortcomings in the current process, and how might AI realistically address these issues?
So I think there's a broad consensus today that clinical trials generally are expensive and quite opaque. There's something of a patchwork of different players, stakeholders, many of whom aren't maybe as aligned as patients participating in the trials might assume. For decades, you've had this sort of traditional process which has governed clinical research, one that back in the day was probably state of the art, but in the interim has become somewhat riddled with inefficiencies and wasted resources. And in recent years, new technologies and innovations, especially around artificial intelligence, I think have called many of these older practices into question. So, on the one hand, you have these really almost groundbreaking tools that technologies such as AI have facilitated and enabled. Tools like digital twins, where you're able to virtually simulate patient cohorts and optimize trial designs long before a single participant has even been enrolled in the trial. Then you've got advanced algorithms which can sift through very complex, unstructured data to more accurately match patients to trials, thereby, potentially slashing recruitment times and costs. You've also gotten, automation in data collection and in monitoring, which speeds up the whole process and brings much more transparency to areas where critical results, certainly in the past, have gone unpublished. So it's probably more than just a technical upgrade. Traditional clinical trial ecosystems involve a myriad of different groups, from sponsors, pharma, biotech, CROs, regulatory bodies, clinical research sites, funding agencies, the list goes on and on, very often operating in their own silos with different priorities. What the advent of modern technology does is highlight, I think, a lot of misalignments or inefficiencies, and so AI is transforming our approach. It's pushing us towards more integrated, accountable, patient-centric ways of engaging, and thereby putting together, a process which is more aligned with expectations of a new generation of better informed patients.
You mentioned how AI could improve some aspects of clinical trials, but there's also a lot of hype around it too, isn't there? So we've been hearing plenty of buzz around AI revolutionizing healthcare, but there's also a lot of concerns that it may be overhyped. So what AI capabilities do you think are genuinely transformative for clinical trials right now? And where is hype outpacing reality?
So I think throughout history, whenever there have been major technological shifts, those have typically been accompanied by lofty predictions that sometimes oversell the immediate impact of those shifts, or those technologies which enable those shifts. So if you think of when the internet emerged, you had early early commentary and pundits forecast on overnight transformation in all facets of human life. A promise that ultimately unfolded more gradually. Similarly, when the personal computer came around, there was much, lauding and hailing it as a device that would instantly revolutionize industry and society. Today, as we look at AI in the context of clinical trials, we do see something of a mix of hype and realistic promise. So, for example, if you look at large language models, there's been a lot of excitement around using these to enhance trial matching and patient education. You've had early studies exploring the potential of these models to, for example, draft patient responses, which could potentially streamline communication processes in clinical trial settings. There are, certainly findings which demonstrate promising capabilities in generating a coherent and informative text. But there are also, consistent or significant rather concerns which seem to persist. And one of those is around this whole concept of automation bias. Where clinicians, trial coordinators maybe over rely on those automated outputs without, critically assessing their accuracy. There's with that, or aligned to that, comes the risk of overfitting, where models perform exceptionally well on the training data but fail to generalize effectively when more diverse or real world clinical scenarios emerge. And I think that's an example of overhype. Then you've got this whole concept of the doctor in your pocket, the notion that AI might be able to replace nuanced decision making of clinicians, and that's a recurring theme. I think rather than replacing clinicians, at this point, certainly AI is probably better viewed as a tool that augments human expertise. And I think one other concept that emerges fairly consistently is this consumer-driven disruption idea. There's been a lot of excitement about the direct-to-consumer AI solutions when you've had wearables and rapid diagnostics emerging. And again, although these innovations capture the imagination, they can sometimes, I think, obscure the very significant challenges of incorporating these tools into a very regulated framework, and therefore, ensuring reliability, data privacy, compliance with clinical standards remains a critical hurdle which must be met. Turning to more transformative capabilities that AI is bringing to the world of clinical trials, I think you're seeing clearly, a transformation in the use of predictive analytics to optimize trial design. For example, around refining inclusion and exclusion criteria. Again, there was earlier hype that suggested AI would revolutionize how these criteria are applied, often automatically and without human oversight. But I think in reality, while AI can rapidly analyze vast data sets to help determine which patients meet specific criteria, expert validation still remains crucial to ensure that the selection process is both accurate and ethically sound. Advanced algorithms also integrate structured data from electronic health records and indeed unstructured data from real-world evidence to help, I guess, in a dynamic way, adjust and refine these criteria in real time. And so this balanced approach not only streamlines the process, but helps reduce trial timelines and ultimately costs by ensuring that that the cohorts selected are as representative and relevant as possible. Then I think you've got areas such as data collection and monitoring, and this is where AI in the context of clinical trials, can extract, can standardize data from unstructured sources, and thereby reduce the burden, or the administrative burden at least, on trial sites, and facilitate faster decision making, and generating substantial resource savings potentially also. In the context then of adapted trial designs, I think you're seeing with AI more flexible trial designs through those protocols that incorporate real-time data analytics. And this allows and really feeds through for those adjustments, such as the use of external or synthetic control arms, surrogate endpoints, all of which can increase the likelihood of more successful outcomes. Because remember, the failure rate in clinical trials remains very, very high at the moment, and this can potentially reduce patient exposure to less effective treatments. And then I suppose finally, you have, in the context of operational efficiencies, data integration, you have AI really, playing a significant part there, where advanced platforms can now consolidate that information, whether it's from electronic health records, lab results, imaging, even environmental and behavioral data into more, comprehensive dashboards. And that holistic view really helps to streamline workflows, certainly at a site level, monitor performance in real time, and I think also identify bottlenecks and deviations that may disrupt the protocol in some way. I think the bottom line with all of this is, while you have current discourse around AI in life sciences and healthcare, leaning in some instances towards exaggeration, history has taught us that technological evolution is more of a gradual process, and recognizing both the limitations and the transformative potential of AI through careful integration, through expert oversight, through continual refinement, will ultimately then lead to more meaningful enhancements in clinical trials and ultimately improved patient outcomes.
Given some capabilities are more hype than reality, what are recent innovations like generative AI, large language models, and advanced machine learning techniques, which have made it easier to handle high volume or incomplete data? Can you highlight how these newer innovations are helping researchers curate, interpret, or integrate real-world data for clinical trials?
I think there's no doubt that recent advances in generative AI, machine learning, and those large language models have underpinned and are now transforming elements of clinical trial research. I don't think many would dispute that. In recent past, clinical trials relied very heavily on manual data entry, and cutting edge might have entailed deploying some rule-based algorithms to sift through patient records and trial data. And even then, that process was time consuming and it was prone to human error. But as you've seen computing power increase exponentially and the array of data sources expand, then machine learning techniques have enabled more automation to parts of this process. And though earlier examples and iterations were perhaps limited to structured data and struggled with free text or incomplete information, if you fast forward to today, now you have this new generation of technologies which are capable of handling vast amounts of unstructured data. And generative AI can really create or transform data in a myriad of innovative ways, synthesizing realistic medical images to train diagnostic algorithms, or generating simulated patient histories for research purposes. And you've got the machine learning algorithms, which really excel at identifying those hidden patterns in large data sets, enabling them to predict patient outcomes based on historical records, and even detecting early signs of disease progression from, as we cited earlier, wearable sensor data. So I think bespoke and proprietary large language models can be developed for very specific clinical applications, and this in turn enables generation of clear, context-sensitive text for patient education materials, or more precise interpretation of complex trial eligibility criteria. And these advancements will allow researchers not only to collect data from diverse sources, clinical notes, imaging records or reports, patient feedback, they can curate and interpret it more effectively. So if you look at those more advanced machine learning algorithms, they can automatically extract standardized data from various formats, reducing manual workload, enhancing consistency of reporting. And then the tailored large language models are applied to generate more nuanced responses and facilitate the interpretation of more intricate, perhaps, clinical data. And these are tasks that are essential for matching patients to trials, refining inclusion and exclusion criteria. And really those innovations have enabled and empowered some of the cutting edge platforms that are capable of integrating that structured data from those sources, and also providing a real-time and more comprehensive view of trial information. And that speeds up the whole data curation process. It ensures insights are drawn which are robust and reflective of real-world diversity, and ultimately lead to more efficient trials and better outcomes for patients. In a nutshell, really, these advancements, whether it's in across generative AI, machine learning, large language models, they represent a natural evolution from earlier, more manual methods of data management. And by transforming raw and in many cases unstructured data into actionable insights, and integrating these into a more cohesive operational framework, they're really helping and empowering researchers to create more adaptive and efficient clinical trials, and maintaining that at the same time that more critical oversight necessary to ensure accuracy, fairness, and reliability.
Justin, with these new tools making data easier to manage, it does raise some ethical concerns, doesn't it? So when people talk about AI in clinical trials, two big concerns arise: the ethical use of patient data and data drift over time. How would you define these risks, and what strategies or safeguards can help mitigate them?
So when we look back at clinical trials, I think a recurring theme has been this idea that they've been opaque, there's been a lack of transparency and consistency in managing the process, issues that have, in some cases, led to incomplete reporting and ethical challenges, to be blunt. Historically, many trials suffered from selective publication of data, with negative or inconclusive findings often remaining hidden. And this opacity eroded trust and skewed our understanding of a therapeutic or a drug's true safety and efficacy. And these systemic biases meant that certain ethnic groups were consistently underrepresented in these studies, thereby limiting the ability to generalize findings and ultimately exacerbating health disparity. Now, today we stand at something of a pivotal moment where modern technology can address these long-standing issues. Advances in AI, machine learning, they're not only streamlining data collection and standardizing how reports are made across multiple sources, but they're opening up new avenues to revisit historical data sets. I think that's important. Generative AI can, synthesize or transform existing data in ways that can highlight underrepresented patterns. By identifying, correcting for past biases, these tools may help create a more inclusive model that better reflect diverse populations. And at the same time, ethical and privacy concerns remain paramount. So when we go to work with or to leverage these powerful technologies, it's crucial to implement robust privacy safeguards and transparent consent processes. And that will ensure that while we enhance data integration and improve patient matching and trial designs, we also balance that against respecting patient confidentiality and protecting sensitive information. Importantly, many clinical trial failures have been linked to execution issues, inefficient patient matching, suboptimal trial design, fragmented data management. By refining these execution factors through technology, researchers can dynamically adjust their trial protocols. They can identify eligible participants more accurately, and ultimately they can enhance the probability of successful outcomes. Moreover, by using advanced algorithms to reanalyze historical data, we can potentially mitigate the effects of underrepresentation and bias, and then pave the way for a more equitable and effective clinical research framework. We know the past episodes of opacity, of ethical oversights, of underrepresentation have hindered clinical trials, but the integration of these more modern tools offers a promising pathway, particularly when balanced with strong ethical oversight and privacy protocols. These technologies can drive greater transparency. They can optimize that trial execution that we've alluded to and promote inclusivity, leading again to those more balanced and better outcomes and more equitable healthcare landscape in general.
These ethical challenges probably affect how quickly the industry adopts AI. Despite the clear benefits, some in the industry remain quite hesitant to adopt AI solutions. What do you see as the key adoption barriers, whether that be cultural, regulatory, or otherwise? And how can we as an industry foster broader enthusiasm for AI-driven clinical trials?
Well, there's no doubt that AI-driven solutions offer clear benefits for clinical trials, whether that's streamlining data collection, enhancing patient matching, trial design. Yet, despite these very clear and tangible advantages, there exists something of a widespread adoption, which remains tempered by several challenges. The first of those, I think you could label as a cultural resistance, where you have a long-standing risk-averse culture within the clinical research community. Many stakeholders accustomed to traditional methods, and there's an understandable hesitancy, to rely on more automated processes for critical decision making. And this is compounded by concerns that over-reliance on technologies like AI could lead to issues like automation bias that we referenced earlier, where human judgment is essentially influenced by machine-generated outputs. And overcoming this will require robust collaboration between AI experts, data scientists, econometricians, clinicians, ensuring that these tools are used to augment rather than replace human expertise. Then a second, I think you've got probably classified under broadly regulatory and ethical hurdles or challenges. Regulatory frameworks continue to evolve, and the current landscape is often seen as fragmented, ensuring that patient safety, data privacy, while incorporating vast amounts of real-world data poses significant challenges. Historical issues like selective reporting and underrepresentation of certain ethnic groups have cast a shadow over that clinical research. So really today's efforts must balance the promise of AI with rigorous ethical oversight and transparent consent processes, strengthening those regulatory guidelines and really establishing clear standards for AI validation. And that, I think, is one of the areas where you'll build trust amongst regulators and the general public at large. And then thirdly, finally, I think you've got this sort of operational and execution bucket, which, beyond cultural and regulatory issues, practical execution factors are critical. And many clinical trial failures have been attributed to those inefficient processes, be it suboptimal patient matching or fragmented data management, as we talked about. AI holds the potential to optimize these areas, but only if the technology is carefully integrated into existing workflows. So demonstrating real-world success, whether it's through pilot projects, adaptive trial designs, and showcase measurable, quantifiable improvements in efficiency and outcome, that will ultimately, convince the skeptics. So I think to build that broader, enthusiasm for AI-driven clinical trials, you've got to take something of a multifaceted approach. Evidence-based demonstrations, so sharing the success stories where AI has notably improved either design or reduced costs or enhanced patient safety. Real-world case studies will help to illustrate the practical benefits of that. And then that whole idea of collaborative development, so encouraging partnerships with the technology developers, the clinicians, the regulatory bodies, the various stakeholders that are impacted or that impact in some way the whole clinical trial world, to ensure that those new innovative tools are designed with practical needs of trial execution in mind. I think then training education is always key when it comes to adoption of new innovative concepts. So by integrating AI literacy into clinical training programs, I think is a good step forward. Will help stakeholders get a better understanding of how these technologies work, but how they can complement, importantly, the clinical expertise. And then finally, communication, transparent communication, clear guidelines. Communicating ethical safeguards will help alleviate concerns over privacy, over bias, and foster a more trusting environment. So, cultural resistance, regulatory uncertainty, execution challenges, these all present barriers clearly. And a concerted effort will be needed, an effort that emphasizes evidence-based outcomes, collaborative innovation, and transparent ethical processes to pave the way for, we hope, a broader adoption of AI-driven clinical trials. And balancing these factors thoughtfully will ultimately lead to a more, efficient and hopefully equitable clinical research environment.
Where adoption is happening, can you share some real-world examples of where AI combined with expert human validation is already easing specific pain points for sponsors, contract research organizations, biotechs, or insurers underwriting trial risks?
Sure. Well, I think there are several compelling real-world use cases where a combination of AI techniques combined with, expert validation is already easing a number of those pain points in the context of clinical trial execution. An advanced clinical trial simulator, which leverages AI-driven biostatistical validation, can really optimize study designs where the system effectively will simulate a proposed trial up to 100,000 times, to generate a probability distribution of outcomes. And this simulation not only forecasts key metrics, so phase completion rates, potential adverse events, but it refines variables such as inclusion, exclusion criteria, and study arm structures. So when experts then review these AI generated insights to validate the statistical assumptions, they can ensure that the recommendations are both robust and clinically practical. So with industry-leading reported prediction rates, such as such an approach, we think will help sponsors, CROs, biotechs really reduce the risk of trial failure because it can pinpoint the most promising trial design elements before significant resources have been committed or deployed. Another, notable use case involves comprehensive competitor and market analysis. So AI algorithms augmented by those natural language processing capabilities, they comb through extensive data sets, literally thousands of clinical trials and billions of patient records. And that analysis then provides detailed benchmarks against historical successes and failures, and it enables researchers to adjust those patient enrollment targets, the site selections, and intervention models. And human experts then can validate these insights, fine-tune the parameters, and ensure that the trial design is both competitive, is cost-effective, and it importantly aligns with those regulatory standards. In a parallel industry use case, insurers, risk underwriters are benefiting from AI-generated custom reports that incorporate advanced predictive analytics. Now, these reports can forecast trial durations, dropout rates, safety profiles, all through integrating real-world data with biostatistical models. So you have expert reviews of these projections, ensuring that risk assessments more accurately reflect both the statistical output and those important nuanced realities of clinical practice, and thereby foster, overall a more informed decision-making process regarding coverage from an insurance perspective and investment. So these are, some sample use cases which we believe demonstrate the breadth of potential application of AI technologies when combined with that rigorous biostatistical validation and expert human oversight. And these go, I think, some considerable way to really addressing near-term pain points in the clinical trial process.
Clearly, AI has practical benefits. People often talk about AI as a disruptive technology, but how do we ensure that it becomes a force for good? So improving patient outcomes, healthcare equity, rather than merely upending established norms.
Look, I think it's true. AI is often, perceived as a disruptive force, but its true promise lies in transforming healthcare into a more effective and equitable and patient-centered field of endeavor. To harness AI as a force for good, rather than merely upending established norms, I think we need to maybe bring our focus back to a number of key areas. And the first of those is really addressing historical shortcomings. Clinical trials, as we said in the past, they have suffered from a lack of transparency, selective reporting, underrepresentation of certain ethnic groups. And these factors have limited our understanding of, in the context of drug discovery, for example, drug safety and drug efficacy. But there are other examples across the fields of medical devices and therapeutics equally, which can be highlighted. Now, today, AI-driven platforms are working to correct these issues. They can integrate vast amounts of structured and unstructured data and simulate trials many thousands of times using biostatistical validation to optimize study designs. And that process refines inclusion, exclusion criteria. It identifies optimal patient populations. It ensures that trials are not only more likely to succeed, but also more representative of those diverse communities. So that's the first point. I think secondly, the fusion of AI with human validation, as we've referred to earlier is important and remains crucial. AI can process, it can analyze data at scale. Its true power emerges, though, when combined with those nuanced judgments that the clinicians and the researchers will take. And that collaboration helps mitigate risks like overfitting that we talked about a little earlier, automation bias, so over relying on the output of the machine, as it were, and ensuring that those insights are generated, with sufficient statistical robustness and clinical meaning. So we believe that balanced approach will really reinforce ethical oversight and build trust amongst the primary stakeholders. And I think thirdly, fostering an ecosystem of transparency and collaboration is crucial here. Stakeholders from across, sponsors, CROs, biotechs, pharma, they must work together to establish clear regulatory guidelines and robust privacy safeguards. Transparent communication here about these new technologies will help ensure that they really serve public health goals and enhance those patient outcomes rather than simply disrupting existing systems.
Considering the positives you've mentioned, Justin, how do you see AI evolving from here? So, AI-driven solutions evolve iteratively with each new data set and each new trial. So, looking ahead, what is your vision for how these advancements will ultimately benefit patients, healthcare providers, and investors over the next few years?
So looking ahead, as AI-driven solutions evolve with each new data set and trial, we envisage a future where clinical research becomes markedly more efficient, more precise, more inclusive. For patients, this means faster access to effective therapies with AI-powered simulation tools that can run thousands of virtual trials before a study even begins. Researchers will optimize study designs by refining the principal variables, forecasting dropout rates, identifying the most promising study arms. And that iterative process will increase the likelihood of those trials then meeting the primary outcomes and in turn accelerating the development of life-saving treatments. Helping or enabling patients to receive therapies that are not only more effective but better tailored to more diverse populations, and again, hopefully addressing some of those historical gaps in representation and equity that we referred to. Healthcare providers, they stand to gain through those enhanced operational efficiencies, improved decision making, because AI has this ability to integrate and analyze swathes of real world data. It will ensure that those clinical trials are designed with robust data-driven insights. And that we believe will really minimize the risk of trial failures due to poor design factors, unforeseen biases, and will ultimately then reduce those administrative burdens and free clinicians up to really focus on their primary objective, which is patient care. So the combination of AI with expert human oversight will also help embed those ethical standards and that transparency, in turn fostering trust in the research process. And then for investors who are funding a lot of these these trials and the iterative nature of AI-driven solutions means that each new data set will refine those predictive models, will enhance those trial designs and lead to higher success rates and ultimately more efficient resource allocation. Industry-beating prediction levels in forecasting trial outcomes, risks associated with trial failures are all significantly mitigated. which ultimately, from an investor standpoint, will translate in more predictable returns on their investment, reduced development costs, and hopefully a stronger pipeline of those innovative therapies, which will be ready to hit the market. So, really, the future of AI in clinical trials is not just about disruption; it's about transformation by that continuous iterative learning and adoption from each new trial. Really, AI will drive a new era of clinical research that's hopefully faster, that's hopefully more precise, more equitable, and capable of delivering tangible benefits, and not just to patients, but by empowering the healthcare providers, providing investors also with more reliable data-backed opportunities. It's a win-win-win on all three fronts.
Wrapping up all that we've discussed, if you had one essential takeaway for regulators, sponsors, and the broader public about embracing AI in clinical trials, what would that be?
So I think the essential takeaway here is that embracing AI in clinical trials isn't about replacing human expertise, it's about empowering it. By harnessing advanced AI to simulate and refine trial designs before human engagement, we can dramatically improve the likelihood of success, while at the same time ensuring transparency, ethical integrity, and inclusivity. So for regulators, for funders, for the broader public, this means that technology can drive more efficient, cost-effective trials that are designed to serve diverse populations. In doing so, we can accelerate the development of life-saving treatments and build a healthcare system that is both innovative and equitable.
Thank you for joining me today for this insightful session. For any listeners who'd like to learn more about TrialKey, please head over to trialkey.ai. You can also book in a strategy session via our website or scanning this QR code. Thank you.